Hello there. Maybe asking, Ben, what are you doing with that knife? Private things. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is how you burn your house down. So, who else has watched Dexter and done that to their microwave?
Warning, I will be spoiling anything and everything Dexter, the original series, New Blood, and obviously Original Sin. If you don't want to be spoiled about any of these series, click off now.
Anyways, so I've been watching a little series recently. You may have heard of it. It's not really that popular right now. It's called Dexter. I have finished everything from seasons 1 to 4, or what many consider to be Dexter's prime, before it fell off. And all I've got to say is, the getaway broke me on every emotional level, and I will never be the same after it. Rita deserved nothing that happened to her this season, and may Arthur Mitchell burn in hell for the rest of eternity. So that being said, the show is pretty good. It's so good! Like, I don't want to make this video just gushing about Dexter, but my god, this show is incredible. The dialogue's amazing. It has some of the best tension I've ever seen in a show. The story is incredible. The characters are fantastic. And Dexter himself has shot himself into easily one of my favorite characters ever.
Also, season 2 is overrated. It's great, but it's nowhere near the show's best. Sorry, not sorry.
Overall, fantastic series that I am so curious and so scared to see how it fell off. And I'm not alone thinking this. Dexter has had sort of a revamp in popularity, kind of like how Breaking Bad had a couple years ago. Whether it's video essays going over the highs and lows of the series, or memeing every scene from the show like it's the prequels all over again. I'll give you a hint, it's usually the latter. Dexter's role in media discourse has skyrocketed. And how convenient that right as the show becomes popular again, 2 spin-offs get announced for the series. One being Dexter Resurrection, a continuation of the original series and New Blood, and possibly a new ending for the series. Again. And our topic of discussion for today, Dexter Original Sin. Original Sin works as a prequel to the original series, taking place 15 years before Dexter Season 1, and showing Dexter's origins of not only joining Miami Metro as a blood splatter analysis, but also how he became the Bay Harbor Butcher before he was called the Bay Harbor Butcher. On February 6, 2023, Showtime ordered a creation of a prequel series for Dexter created by Clyde Phillips, originally titled Dexter Origins. It was later renamed to Dexter Original Sin, with Clyde Phillips set as showrunner and having a lot of executive producers, among whom was Dexter's actor himself, Michael C. Hall. The casting was a huge product of interest for fans because how were you going to get an actor to play a young Dexter without doing whatever they thought they were doing here in season 2. Dexter's an excellent series, but my god is it far from perfect. Then the trailer was shown in November 2024, with Patrick Gibson set to star as the titular character himself, Christian Slater playing Harry Morgan, Dexter's father, and Molly Brown playing Dex's sister, Deborah. Several other cast members were shown, such as the new actors and actresses for Angel Batista, Vince Masuka, and Maria LaGuerta, as well as other new characters. And of course, Michael C. Hall returning as Dexter's internal voice. Safe to say people were mixed about the casting, especially for Dexter. It was a trailer after all, so most people's final reactions were, let's see how this turns out. Well, now that Original Sin Season 1 has ended, let's see how it turned out. Also, I'm not going to be doing scene-by-scene analysis for these episodes like I do for movies to avoid making this video like 3 hours long. Episode 1 is a really neat premiere. Oh, the opening's a spoiler for New Blood. Yeah, I know, it sucks, but I'll get to that later on. I think the entirety of this series being Dex thinking back on his good old days as he's dying is a really interesting way to tie this into the present of Dexter and possibly Resurrection. The opening credits of this show is a neat version of the originals, but I am never getting over this stupid chomp sound effect they put in here. That sound effect made it through several tiers of approval from higher-ups. I want you to remember that. I think this premiere does a decent job at showing Dex's overall character. His social awkwardness at the party, his intelligence in sneaking around at the hospital, his need for blood coming out at several points in the episode, his want to help others, and the kill at the end was extremely well handled. Patrick Gibson is solid in the first 2 episodes, even though he does this goofy Dexter smirk a bit too much. Like, it just gets distracting after a while. But he gets much better as young Dex around episode 3. I'm not saying he's bad in the first 2 episodes, but he seems to blend more into the role later on. Christian Slater is amazing as Harry, and I think the show focusing on Harry almost as much as it does on Dex works incredibly well in its favor. Since we don't know Harry's story anywhere near as much as we know Dex's, the show delves into his backstory throughout the show as well, with these really good flashback moments that we'll cover later. And rounding out the main trio, we have Deb. First off, Molly Brown is pretty much perfect as young Deb, for better or for worse. Because Dexter fans can realize that while Deb is a really well-written character, she can get mad annoying in Dexter sometimes. And she's pretty much the same in this show. But like, she's reasonably annoying for the most part. I mean, she even drops an F-bomb in every sentence, just like adult Deb. It's the little things. But I'd say overall, Deb's parts of the plot of the show are easily the weakest. I'm not saying they're bad or anything, but compared to how interesting Dexter and Harry's are and how well they delve into both as characters, Deb's subplots most of the time are sort of just an alright excuse for the episodes to be nearly an hour long. Nothing horrible to sit through, they're good in a vacuum. But sometimes I just found myself saying, okay, this is neat and all, but let's please get back to the plot lines I'm actually really invested in. And they're not even that invasive in a lot of the episodes they're in. Anyways, back to the actual episode of interest, the premiere. Yeah, it's good. It works as an introduction to the series. It introduces its characters well, both old and new faces. It introduces the story of the judge's son and the character conflicts well. The nurse villain is an okay villain with a decent motivation, but she's nothing spectacular or anything. As I stated before, I think Dex's first kill was handled very well and was a highlight of the episode. There were some cute moments near the end, especially the recreation of the Morgans leaving the hospital from the original series. It's got its flaws, the pacing's a little bit all over the place, and once again, it really feels like Patrick Gibson is still learning his way through playing Dex. But overall, a good premiere. Side note, I just want to say, Alex Shimizu is actually perfect as young Masuka. He even nailed the laugh. Best episode thus far. Out of 1. Episode 2 is also pretty good. This episode is where the Harry flashbacks really begin, and they are a very good insight into Harry's character. Showing him first meet Laura Moser, and eventually connecting with not only her, but also Dexter and Brian, which will eventually tie into the end of the season. Beyond that, I like Dexter starting to find his place with the police department with not only his development from the veggie delivery man to the donut guy, but also at the restaurant scene. Oh my god, it's Brian Moser! I love how we all collectively theorized that this guy was Brian via vaguely looking like Brian. And then we were all correct. The build-up with Dex's plot to find Tony was neat. In fact, this entire episode kind of just felt like setup for episode 3, to be honest. I mean, between the Dex stuff and Deb giving her friend Sophia the nurse's earrings that Dex took as trophies, it's all just setup for episode 3, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but it just makes this episode kind of feel like meandering before we get to the real good stuff. Good episode, slightly weaker than the premiere. Episode 3 is where the show really starts to lock in. The scenes with Dex trying to prove that Tony's guilty and him interacting with Tony are really tense, even though we already know how this ends. I think the best way to describe the tension in the show is, it's not about whether Dex is going to get caught in some way or not, it's how he's going to get himself out of these situations with minimal to no consequences. Also, Tony's death scene and Dex's reaction, bro, chills. I like Tony's parrot, he's very silly. The Harry flashback scenes really start to get super engaging in this episode, and this is the episode where we find out that Deb's an astrology girl. I'm not shocked, I am disappointed. I think this episode easily has the best Deb subplot thus far, mainly because Dexter and Sophia's scene at the end was really cute. Oh boy, guys, another relationship Dexter's in. This can only end badly, right? Rita! Also, this is canonically LaGuarta's introduction into the series, and she's alright, I guess. Captain Spencer not being a huge fan of her is a bit of a red flag for a reveal later on in the show, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But she doesn't really do much this episode. But besides that, I think this episode is really great. easily the best episode thus far. Episode 4 is another really solid episode. The flashbacks with Harry hanging out with child Dex and Brian are pretty great, even though I do find it the tiniest bit strange that they're showing that Brian's had these murderous tendencies before the shipping container incident. Seeing Dexter so shaken up and angry about seeing the judge's son's dead body, the first child death he's seen, is great in showing Dexter's slow development into becoming the Dex we know and love. Deb's subplot's fine, it really doesn't impact the episode that much. The most it amounts to is her getting with this rich guy for like half the season. Even though I do find it very funny how Harry knows Deb's lying at the end of the episode. Mad Dog's an alright antagonist, an old hitman who believes his victims deserved it and who lies about being a former real estate agent in a really well handled conversation between him and Dex. And that ending is such a good cliffhanger. Mad Dog escaping Dex's attempt on his life and ends up getting hit by a car. Now that's how you make a cliffhanger. Second best episode thus far? Episode 5 is, yet again, another solid episode. I need to start complaining more. I'm being too positive. It is a bit funny that Dex only gets grounded by Harry when he failed to murder someone. It's the dark humor of Dexter that makes me love it so much. Dex getting high off Deb's hash brownies is just so funny to watch, and it leads to some great moments between him and Deb. I forgot to mention this earlier, but Dex and Deb's dynamic in this show is scaringly relatable to my relationship with my sister. I think Dex and Deb's dynamic in this show and in OG Dexter is just really good and sweet, which makes an apparently certain plot point later on in the show extremely uncomfortable. Plants Fun Facts. I'm Plant, and did you know that incest is no good? Also, this is the episode where Dex first gets some atorphine, the stuff he originally used to knock people out, and that's pretty neat. The Harry flashbacks are fine, I guess. It's just Harry continuing his affair with Laura and then finding out his wife Doris is pregnant with Deb. And Harry almost killing the released murderer at the end only for Dex to knock him out and put him on the table was both a very funny moment with Harry's reaction and also a very nice character moment with Dex not allowing Harry to ruin his life over Reed. And Dex visiting Doris's grave at the end was nice. Overall, just a solid episode, not much else. I'll put it like barely above the premiere. Episode 6 is really great. Like, really great. I swear on Dexter's soon-to-be resurrected corpse, the last couple episodes are gonna get more interesting descriptions, guys. The opening with Spencer's son Nicky getting kidnapped was a great hook. Dex going after Reed throughout the entire episode was entertaining, and the double date scene was very funny. I did not need to see at all what happened in the bathroom, though. Dex's conflict about knowing that Reed being his third kill will make him a serial killer was pretty good. Reed's death scene was excellently handled. Patrick Gibson's performance in this scene is one of his best scene performances yet. They managed to pull off the "you're not so different, you and I" trope well. You absolute mad lads. Like, this feels like a scene straight out of Dexter. It's fantastic. The Harry flashbacks are pretty neat, with Laura getting more and more uncomfortable with playing a double agent for Miami Metro and Harry convincing her to keep going, which we can all guess how that's gonna end for her. Also, Doris gives birth to Deb and asks Harry to cut off the affair with Laura for the sake of their family. In the end, where Dex finds out that the police have found body parts of the bodies of Dex's victims that he dropped into the swamp, another amazing cliffhanger. This episode is like slightly above episode 3. Episode 7 isn't quite as great as the previous episode, but it's still a solid episode with some great twists. This episode displays a lot of Dex's intelligence in getting himself out of situations, like getting rid of evidence by making it look like a mistake. I also like how this is kind of a small callback to episode 3 of the original show. It's a small callback, but I find it funny. This episode is where connections start getting made with the judge's son's case, with Spencer's son also getting a severed finger sent to Miami Metro. Dex notices a small bit of blood on the box, which he thinks can close him in on the kidnapper, and Harry and LaGuerta chase after the car that kidnapped the judge's son and Spencer's son. Also, random cameo from my goat Miguel Prado, but I'm not complaining. Miguel is top 5 Dexter antagonist. I don't want to hear otherwise. Deb's subplot, once again, exists. Her punching her rival on the volleyball team was kinda satisfying, but beyond that, Also, Sophia breaks up with Dex because she thinks he cheated on her, something that Dex would never learn from. The Harry flashbacks are mainly set up for Laura getting caught later on. They're alright, I guess. But the best part of the episode is easily the ending, where it's revealed that Spencer is the one who kidnapped the judge's son and his own son. I think that the build-up could have been handled better, but it's still a good reveal. But we haven't gotten anywhere near the biggest plot twists between episodes 4 and 5. Episode 8 is where we really hit the point of no return. First off, we're finally done with the Deb sneaking off to her rich boyfriend's place arc that only went on for, I don't know, half the godforsaken season. This leads to Dex finding out they can use the ocean to dump his victims' bodies. Yes, Dexter officially got the idea of dumping bodies into the ocean from Deb throwing away her ex's bracelet into the ocean. Look, I never said this show was perfect when explaining stuff from the original show. Also, Deb clearly never learned from her poor choice in romantic partners. Anyways, Dex tells Harry that he thinks Spencer kidnapped his own son, and Harry of course doesn't believe him. Then Harry and LaGuardia go searching for the car that they were chasing last episode, which leads to Harry trying to find files on the murdered man who owned the car before the kidnappers, which leads to him finding a file named Moser B. Oh my god, no way, it's a file on the Bay Harbor Butcher himself. So we find out that Brian was discharged from his mental institution and that one of the nurses with Brian was murdered. So the theory from episode 2 was true. And the episode also has one of the better flashback storylines, with Laura getting caught talking to Harry and her and the boys being brought to the shipping container where Dexter witnesses his first murder. Born in blood. Both of us. Harry was right. I thought I could change what I am. Episode 9 is the best episode of the show thus far. All the buildup is starting to pay off here. Dexter giving attempt after attempt to catch Spencer is filled with so much juicy tension. Harry going deeper and deeper into looking for Brian and finding out that Brian was there at all the crime scenes Dexter was working at. And of course, this being the first episode where we see a grown-up but not really grown-up Brian Moser. And just like Patrick Gibson as young Dex, Robbie Attal does a great job playing young Brian. He controls every scene he's in, and his moments near the beginning and end of the episode were so well handled. The flashbacks are also some of the best of the series. We finally get to Laura's death and the Morgans taking in Dexter and Brian, but he gets sent off with a custody services worker after nearly killing Deb and attacking Harry, so this episode also sets up Deb joining the police academy, which is a neat little setup. And then Dexter finally catches Spencer, finding out that Spencer used their own son as a way to get back at his ex-wife for cheating on him. I mean, reasonable response. Your wife cheats on you? Become a serial killer. And now we've made it to the end of season 1, episode 10. So you would hope that this episode is the best of the season. It is. It very much is. This episode is an amazing finale. I wouldn't say this episode is quite on the tier of something like The Getaway or Born Free, but a lot of episodes in television aren't The Getaway or Born Free, so it's not this episode's fault it's not near perfection. It's just fine the way it is. Anyways, pretty much everything pays off here. It's revealed that Brian was sent to multiple foster homes before being sent to the mental hospital. The scenes of him there and him murdering the therapist were so good. And his encounter with Harry is probably my second favorite moment of the season. Brian just throwing various frustrations of his against Harry right at Harry's face, between Harry indirectly getting his mom killed and having Dex forget he even has a brother. It's just so well handled. You can understand why Brian feels all these emotions against Harry, but you can also see why Harry wants Brian to stay as far away from his brother as possible, and even not wanting to kill Brian, which lets Brian get away. And the scene is elevated by Christian Slater and Robbie Attall's performances in this scene. That's not even getting into all the Dexter stuff this episode. Dex choosing to save Spencer's son instead of going after Spencer was a nice showing of Dex's character, showing that even through all the immense amount of people he kills, he's doing all this to protect others from getting hurt. And the parallel with Spencer trying to drown his son after in the premiere, it showed Harry failing to save his son from drowning. God, I love Dexter parallels. Also the twist about Nikki not being Spencer's son. In Dexter, members of families lying to each other is just common at this point. And Dex's line about Spencer having to die knowing he failed as a cop, as a father, as a husband, and as a human being. Oh my god! Dexter has the rawest lines whenever he game ends someone, dude. Oh my lord. Best moment of the season, easily. The scene where Dexter and Harry comfort each other after all the action was nice. Deb tells Harry she's joining the police academy to his delight, and the season ends with the Morgans doing a silly little dance number. Call it corny, I don't care, it's nice. And we see Brian looking inside at his younger brother being happy. Oh my god, show, you can't hurt me like this! And there ends Dexter Original Sin Season 1. Overall, 0 out of 10, no jokes. What was actually the point of any of this? In all seriousness, this show exceeded pretty much everyone's expectations, and it is considered by many to be a worthwhile addition to the franchise. As for my opinion, yeah, this show's great. It works well as a great introduction for anyone who wants to get into Dexter. At least I would say that, if they didn't spoil the current final moment of the series overall in the first 5 minutes of the show. Like, I understand wanting to tie this in eventually to Dexter Resurrection, but like, you don't want to drop a spoiler this big in the first bit of the show if you want to get people into the series. You can't even say that this was nostalgia bait because most of the fanbase hates New Blood's ending. Seriously, just skip the first 5 minutes of the premiere and you're golden for the rest of the show. I think at least. Anyways, the story feels like an early Dexter season storyline between Miami Metro trying to catch a killer and Dexter getting up to his usual shenanigans. The show's writing is great overall, the acting is amazing, especially from Patrick Gibson and Christian Slater. It's pretty funny at points. The action and tension is really good. The plot twists aren't the best things ever, but they're solidly handled. Dexter and Harry's development and dynamic are some of the best aspects of the show. This young, inexperienced Dexter slowly molding into the Dex we know and love from season 1 and beyond was amazing to see play out, and his dynamic with Harry is as good as it is in the OG show. And Harry becomes a much more complex character in the show, mainly through seeing his flashbacks. They do a great job showing how Harry is always trying to do the right thing, even when he indirectly gets the people he cares about hurt in some way. And they show that his actions have consequences between him getting Laura killed and everything to do with Brian. Harry is shown to be almost like Dexter in a way, and I think that parallel works really well. Even beyond Dex and Harry, the rest of the characters are overall good. Deb's subplots may be kind of forgettable and time wasters, but I like her as a character and her development was okay. Characters like Angel and LaGuardia kind of just feel like their OG series selves, and that's fine I guess. Masuka, of course, stole every scene he was in, because it's Vince Masuka. New side characters like Tanya and Sophia were neat little side characters. Spencer was a pretty good twist villain. He's nowhere near someone like Brian, Dokes, Miguel, or Trinity. None of the villains this season even come close to that, but they're still pretty good. And of course, Brian Moser in this season was the MVP of the last 2 episodes. They somehow naturally integrate Brian into the show without it feeling like fan service, and tie him into the plot with him helping all these murders. Now, with all these positives being said, this show is far from perfect. Again, Deb's subplots rarely feel like they're super important to the episodes, and I like the episodes where it was barely in there more. The most it led to was some decent development from Deb and some cute moments. I feel like the pacing of certain parts of the show could have been better, and the first 2 episodes, while they aren't bad, they're clearly trying to find their footing before we get to episode 3 and beyond. Also, some of the Harry flashbacks weren't really that interesting. Overall, besides that, I don't really have many flaws with this show. It's just a great prequel and a great introduction for people who want to get into Dexter, barring that one thing at the beginning. With all these factors taken in, I'm gonna give Dexter Original Sin Season 1 an 8.5 out of 10. A great series that I cannot recommend enough, and I cannot wait for Season 2. What in the world? You know, I don't get many opportunities to do this. So I'm gonna make this very special. My dark passenger craves a sacrifice. A sacrifice that I've been given on a silver platter. But first, I want to see the face of the man who decides to break into another man's home and raid his pantry. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. You know, I've been watching you from afar. You and I aren't.
Bully, I'm gonna stop you right there. If the next words that come out of your mouth are "you and I aren't so different," I swear I will cut off your tongue.
Love you too, man.
I'm gonna ignore the fact that you just said that. Why are you raiding my pantry?
What do you think? I was looking for food.
Bully, you do know there's like a grocery store like 5 minutes away from here, right?
I don't got money.
I really hate to tell you this, but that does not sound like my problem.
Well, your pantry situation doesn't sound like my problem then.
Well, it will be if the police are involved.
What are they gonna do? Put me in a jail cell? I could just... My Oreos. Bully! Help! God, that explosion really did something. Yeah, Dexter Original Sin. Good show. Watch it. I think I need to go to the hospital. Not because of the explosion or anything, but because I think I swallowed the knife.